Welcome to Kevin Makes Cool Things. I'm Kevin, and today I am making a digital scrapbook using Python. This is the first software project I've done as part of the channel, but it's always been part of the roadmap. Years ago when I set up this channel, I named it Kevin Makes Cool Things instead of Kevin 3D Print Stuff because I always wanted to explore a wide array of interests. Going forwards, 3D printing is still going to be a big part of what I do here, but I'm just going to be doing some software, some electronics, and probably eventually some woodworking projects. For any of you wondering why I'm making this bold transition now, I can assure you it was mostly unplanned. Until yesterday morning, I was planning on doing a 3D printing project for this month. I've been working on making the Kamish runestone from the solo leveling manhwa. I'm even inserting a red EL panel, so the rune should glow bright red just like it does in the artwork. It should be a really neat project, but a couple of days ago, everything went sideways. Yesterday morning, I had to make a decision between doing a really crappy job finishing that project for this month or reordering parts and doing it upright for next month. I had already been planning on making this digital scrapbook or a project for next month, probably along with a smaller 3D printing project, just in case all of you didn't take to this new type of video. I decided to rearrange things and do the digital scrapbooker this month because I do take my posting schedule very seriously. I really enjoy the YouTube aspect of things and interacting with all of you in the comments, but doing these videos every month also forces me to make progress. I think most of you watching can relate to how hard it is to find the time and motivation to do projects like this, especially when you have work and other commitments vying for your time. I want to hold myself accountable to my posting schedule, even if it means rearranging a couple of things. Now, why would I want to make a digital scrapbook with Python? Partly, it's an interesting and wacky idea, but it's not as impractical as it immediately seems. I went on a really nice trip with my wife earlier this month, and when I got back, I took all the pictures off my phone and put them on my PC, right next to a folder with all the pictures from last year's trip, which I still haven't done anything with. It makes me really sad to think about all these photos and memories just rotting away on some folder on my PC. Eventually, I do want to do up nice scrapbooks for all of this and include ticket stubs and other mementos from the trip, but that's not going to happen anytime soon. What I really want is a way to quickly put pictures together with small text descriptions, both so I can better remember the things I did on this trip, but also so I have a convenient way to show friends and family what I did without going through my phone and poorly narrating some of these events. That's what I'm going to try to do today, so let's dive in and see how it turns out. This is a mock-up I put together in GIMP. I'm using pictures from unsplash.com for this example, but eventually I'll be using my actual vacation photos. For each page, I'll specify the background image and page title, as well as the image, subtitle, and description. I plan to make a few different templates, so I can vary how this stuff is presented on different pages. Here are what the inputs for the program are going to look like. I'm going to define the front cover and back cover. Eventually, I'll probably add some sort of table of contents, but that's not going to be today. For each page, I define the page title, what the background image is, what the template is, and then the different pictures, subtitles, and descriptions. I don't intend to make any kind of user interface at this point. This format is pretty easy for me to deal with, but if someone non-technical, like my wife, wants to create something, she can just send me the information and I'll copy and paste it into the proper format. The dimensions I'm going for here are 12 by 12 inches for the page and 4 by 6 inches for the pictures. Since this is a digital scrapbook, I could theoretically do any size I want, but like I mentioned earlier, I plan to eventually make a physical scrapbook for each of these trips. That way I can include postcards, ticket stubs, and other little mementos. 12 by 12 is a really common size for scrapbooking, so if I like how these digital ones look, I can use that as a template for doing up the physical ones. Now also, before we get into the software side of things, I have to warn you, I have no formal training in software development. I am totally self-taught. This is really just me doing up a cool project and narrating as I go. If you happen to learn something, that's great, but I am not doing this as a tutorial. I'm going to be using Python and Pycharm, which is an editor for Python. Both of those are free for most people, so if this interests you or you're feeling inspired after watching this, I I recommend you try downloading those, watching some proper tutorials, and then diving into projects of your own. Alright, let's get started. I've done a number of things off camera just to make sure that I'm in a decent position to start this video, so let me catch you up. First, I've gone through and done a couple of tutorials. They all start with importing PIL. This is an image manipulation library, which is going to do most of the heavy lifting. Next, I'm breaking down all of those inputs I was just talking about. I basically did this off camera just so you didn't have to see me type this all in, because that's not particularly exciting. Next, I define the location where all the files for this are, so this program knows to look in my Python scrapbooking folder. Then I set up an image. This is going to be the background image. I'm using the exact same cloud background that you saw in the example previously. Then I load a font, and then I put some random text at a specific location. Next, I add some text, and this can be centered in the X direction, the Y direction, or both. Right now, I'm just centering it in the X direction. This is going to be really crucial when I'm trying to add a title centered on the top of the page. Then I load a photo, resize that photo, and then paste it on there. I'm definitely going to have to come back and redo parts of the resizing, but I will do that in a little bit. Nearly at the end now, this saves the image I put together. That's going to be very important at the end, but isn't super relevant right now. And then I go and show what I've actually put together. So let me run this, and it's going to warn me that something's depreciated, which I don't really care about. And then I can see what I put together. I created a function called generatePage, which would accept all the information I just defined for each page and create a single image. The first step was breaking down that information into specific items, like the title text. Then I started cutting and pasting parts of my original proof of concept into the proper positions. This started with the background image, and then adding centered titles. Next, I started setting up the first template. If the page says template 1, then I know how to interpret the listed information, like the file names for the pictures, and where to place different elements. I spent a fair amount of time defining where the pictures and text go. This was tedious, but it will make it easier to make changes in the future. One issue which I never properly resolved was how to break up text between multiple lines. I managed to get something which works well enough, but I'm sure there's a better solution. I kept expanding this until I had the basic page ready. I created a function called createScrapbook, which adds the covers and does generatePage for every page I defined. This function resulted in a PDF. This was a really cool output to see after an hour of work. I was feeling pretty good after getting to this point, and decided to take a break before coming back to work on some of the more advanced features. Unfortunately, I lost all of my footage for this next session, so let me catch you up on what I did. First, I wanted to add something to account for pixel density. So far, I've been doing 100 pixels per inch, which isn't particularly good quality. I added a variable so I could change this in future, and then updated all of the pixel values in the code. So instead of saying 50 pixels, it said 0.5 inches times the number of pixels per inch. I had to go through and define each of these as an int, or an integer number, as opposed to a float, which could include a decimal. Programs are really specific, and it got mad at me when I did this multiplication without defining the results. I opened up a new GIMP project and created a 12 by 12 inch image with 300 pixels per inch. I dropped in the image of clouds and turned down the opacity a bit, so it would look nice as a background. The result looked like this, with oversized pages but a really small front and back cover. This was because the front and back covers still had a pixel density of 100. Once I created updated versions, with the same pixel density as the background, it all looked correct again. The text was still really small, so I updated that a little bit later. The next issue was resizing the images. The hedgehog and polar bear image both have the perfect aspect ratio for 4:6, but that wasn't the case with the kitten photo. This was intentional on my part. My phone takes pictures which are 4.5:6, so if I don't crop them a little bit while I'm scaling them, everything will be slightly squished. I created a function which accepts the image and the eventual width and height. From there, it checks if the aspect ratio is correct. If not, then it will scale down the image and crop off anything extra. Out of everything I did for this project, this is the piece which makes me the most nervous. I might be missing something big here, but it seems to work. I checked the results with the photo of the kitten, and you can see that a little bit has been shaved off the top and bottom. I fiddled with the text size to try to make this look better. I ran into issues that the descriptions I had added were too short to really work for testing, so I copied and pasted some paragraphs from Wikipedia to get a better sense of what the final result would be. At this point, it was looking pretty good. The last thing I wanted to do before wrapping up was add a second template. I copied and pasted the entire template 1 section and updated it to check if it says template 2. At this point, I realized I messed up some things earlier, so I had to make some other updates. I changed the input for page 2 to say template 2 and let it run. The results look pretty good, especially considering I made this in just a few hours. I am really happy with how this turned out. It's kind of weird to say this, but this may be the most functional thing I've ever made as part of this channel. Normally the 3D printing props I make go in a box when I'm done, but this is something I'm actually going to continue to use. Probably next weekend, my grandma and other members of my family are going to be getting a digital scrapbook about my trip. That's kind of awesome. I am really nervous to post this just because I've never done anything like this before. Let me know in the comments what you think, and if you did enjoy the video, then please give it a like. I'll post all the code on GitHub in case you're interested. There'll be a link to that in the video description. I'll be back next month with another 3D printing video, and I'll tell you everything that went wrong on this current solo leveling project.